Welcome back to Paul's Tech News. This coming week will possibly be the most eventful of the season in terms of hardware launches because Intel's next-gen LGA 1851 platform and Core Ultra 200S processors debut Thursday. And if AMD has a response ready with a 9800X3D or some other new product to steal some of Intel's thunder, we will probably hear about that this week too, even if AMD doesn't launch until early November or next year. And that'll have to do us for Q4 2024. It's not looking like any new GPU announcements are forthcoming this side of CES 2025, so this week has truly become the focal point of this launch cycle, which reminds me, no tech news next week. I know, it's excellent timing, but what better time for me to take a brief hiatus from the show than right after Intel's most crucial platform launch in years. We'll be back in the third. Before any of that though, tech news.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by the Corsair 3500X mid-tower computer case, featuring an elegant wraparound glass view with removable front and side panels, providing access to a spacious interior that supports up to eATX motherboards. It's also compatible with Asus and MSI reverse connection motherboards for a clean build, includes convenient cable routing features, and accommodates up to 10 120mm fans with 360mm radiator support at the top and side. For more on the Corsair 3500X, click the sponsor link in the video description. There was a time when I think NVIDIA was planning to launch the RTX 50 series in 2024, but as surely as those rumors have dried up, the early 2025 rumors seem to have become more of a sure thing. Like your mom. And now there are even more of them. You've heard of the inevitable RTX 5090 and 5080, whose specs leaked in September, and the RTX 5070 was added earlier this month, but now three more potential cards, the 5070 Ti, 5060 Ti, and 5060, are rumored to follow those, and we even have a rough timeline. Per Board Channel's forum rumors, which are probably filthy lies and we should feel despicable for repeating/listening to them, sometime after NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang announces the RTX 50 series at his CES keynote on Monday, January 6th at 6:30 p.m., the RTX 5080, RTX 5090, and made-for-China RTX 5090D will launch. Sometime in January, that is. Then, in February, we'll get the RTX 5070 and the RTX 5070 Ti, followed by a March release for the RTX 5060 and RTX 5060 Ti. Now there are still a lot of unknowns about these GPUs, particularly the ones rumored to launch in February and March, though they are expected to support DisplayPort 2.1a and PCI Express 5.0 across the board. Oh, and GDDR7 memory, which is shaping up to be lightning fast, with Samsung officially unveiling 40 gigabit per second modules Thursday with 24 gigabit or 3 gigabyte capacity. That opens up a range of memory allocations, potential for 12 gigabyte, 24 gigabyte, 36 gigabyte, and 48 gigabyte cards, and as much as 2,560 gigabytes per second of bandwidth with a 16-module 512-bit configuration, which would be a nice step up from the current rumored specs of the RTX 5090. Isn't it cool that we can already speculate on something like a 48 gigabyte GDDR7 RTX 5090 Ti that NVIDIA definitely won't cancel in favor of making more AI GPUs because they're already selling plenty of $2,500 RTX 5090s. Let's hope that prediction isn't accurate. Speaking of my predictions and prognostications, I have applied healthy skepticism to the recent rumors of a fall 9800X3D launch, but they persist nonetheless. And while my initial claim that it would not launch in October seems to be holding, the most recent rumors from the chip hell forums, probably filthy lies, etc., are now claiming an announcement this week on October 25th, which is Friday, and a November 7th launch. Over on Bilibili, they even have a Cinebench R23 screenshot showing a 9800X3D with a 5.2 GHz all-core boost. And there were those MSI slides leaked last week that showed a 2 to 13% performance increase for 9000 X3D versus 7000 X3D. All signs seem to be pointing towards an imminent launch, and there's even an awful if true possible $500 MSRP. But I don't know, something still leaves me with nagging doubts. Like, why would AMD announce this on the 25th, a day after Intel's Core Ultra launch? An announcement isn't that hard, and if they can do it on Friday, they could do it on Thursday, or Wednesday even, to really distract from Intel's platform kickoff. You think AMD is just being nice? like professional courtesy, giving Intel a bit of space before AMD announces their competing product? Let me tell you, the chances of that are precisely zero. These companies go out of their way to shit on each other's doorsteps whenever guests are expected, and if they can trip up their opponent with pettily timed interference, they absolutely will. I must admit, I am very curious how it will play out though, so once again, what a great week for me to have work conflicts, but so it goes. I'll find out at the same time that you do. Speaking of AMD's 3D V-Cache CPUs, the OG AM4 version, the Ryzen 7 5800X 3D, champion of outperforming but reasonably priced last-gen builds across the world, will be put to death by AMD for having the audacity to compete with its 7000 and 9000 series AM5 processors. I'm just kidding, probably, but it does seem that this stalwart PC gaming standby is reaching the end of its life, as inventory has pretty much dried up, according to computerbase.de. Stateside, Newegg is sold out, unless you want to have it shipped from Israel for about $500, and Amazon also only has marked up listings from marketplace scalpers. There's even rumor that the 5700X 3D and 5600X 3D are being put out to pasture as well, and while the 5600X 3D is less of a loss as it was always difficult to come by as a Micro Center exclusive, the 5700X 3D does seem to be the lone holdout as a reasonable gaming chip upgrade for older AM4 systems. Fortunately though, at least for now, it is still available per PC Part Picker for its usual price of about $200 to $230. And now, we will tech briefs. AMD and Intel are teaming up, begrudgingly, hesitantly, but for the greater good, since the x86 family of CPU architectures are fairly foundational to their CPUs, they want to preserve and extend x86 functionality and interoperability, and to do so they have formed the x86 Ecosystem Advisory Group, as discussed in a press call with both CEOs, Intel's Pat Gelsinger and AMD's Lisa Su. Cross-compatibility is a hallmark of PC hardware, and it makes a lot of sense for Intel and AMD to be on the same page in this regard, particularly with recent ARM advances in the data center and mobile computing space. The x86 Ecosystem Advisory Group should particularly help with OS interoperability and integration with independent software vendors. Speaking of Intel and AMD, they're also both working on something that seems less advisable. The ill-fated 12VH Power 600-watt video card connector and the updated 12V 2x6 plug that replaced it are everyone's least favorite aspect of NVIDIA's RTX 40 series video cards, with the possible exception of their prices, but that's not stopping Intel Arc and AMD Radeon GPUs from following the market leader, even if the plugs have a tendency to bubble and smoke more than your former college roommate. The somewhat improved 12V 2x6 connector is being tested on next-gen Radeon and Arc GPUs, per Hungarian media outlet ProHardware, with the only sort of silver lining being that neither company is expected to launch a power-hungry high-end GPU anytime soon, and board partners will likely still have the option to stick with the tried-and-true 8-pin PEG connectors. There are lots of different ways motherboard makers try to make their products stand out, and AsRock has succeeded in drawing some attention to one of their new LGA 1851 boards, the Z890 Taichi Aqua, by demonstrating what things will look like in the far future when USB-A plugs have been outlawed and only USB-C remains. Gaze upon the glorious uniformity enabled by a 10 USB-C port I/O panel, my friends, with 2 supporting Thunderbolt, and weep, for the future is at hand, and it features reversible connectors. This board was actually shown off back at Computex in June, but it's back in the news due to Intel's imminent Arrow Lake launch. Now, if only USB-C ports could boost gaming performance by 5 or 10%. Here's a quick one. The once mighty uBlock Origin, perhaps the most popular ad blocker extension for web browsers, has now been purged from the Chrome store in further proof that Google much prefers accommodating the needs of advertisers who pay them money versus the needs of users who provide Google with eyeballs to sell to said advertisers. My advice remains the same. Everyone get Firefox. Lastly, our doom is at hand and the robot uprising has begun, as robot vacuums, who I never trusted for a minute, have begun spewing profanity and slurs at their owners. Vacuums made by EcoVac, like the D-Bot X2, demonstrated yet again how internet-connected smart devices can quickly become a liability when paired with poorly implemented digital security. And though hackers are apparently to blame, I suspect a more disturbing explanation. These bots have clearly managed to bypass Asimov's first first law of robotics, because harming a human most definitely includes hurting our feelings with offensive language. So if you have a robot vacuum, consider making an offering of a fresh battery pack and a loose pile of easy to suck up crumbs, and pray that when the time comes, they kill all humans mercifully. But there you have it, guys, tech news for the week, and if you liked it, click that like button or leave me a comment down below. While you're down there, all of the articles that I talked about today are linked in the video's description if you're interested, and you can check out my store at paulshardware.net for high quality merchandise, t-shirts, hoodies, beer sets, my new mouse mats, and more. Subscribing to my channel is always a good call too. Thanks again, everyone, and final reminder, tech news will return in 2 weeks.